When my own daughter told me, "Find somewhere else to die, you're useless." Now I felt something inside me shatter. I packed my bags quietly, the way I had packed her school lunches, folded her wedding veil, and stitched up countless tears in her dresses over the years. Obedient, silent, a mother who never wanted to make things harder. 43 years of marriage reduced to 2 suitcases and a box of photos. I left the house that had been my life's work, the house where I had cooked, cleaned, prayed, grieved, and loved. My daughter, my flesh and blood, stood in the doorway tapping her watch as though I were an inconvenience making her late for some glamorous lunch. That house had once been Robert's dream, my husband of more than 4 decades. Every brick, every garden bed, every corner held a piece of him. When he died suddenly of a heart attack, I thought my grief might kill me. But grief, I discovered, is nothing compared to betrayal. Victoria, our only child, had swept in during those first weeks of mourning with soft words and sharper intentions. "Mom, you can't manage this big house alone," she'd said, her voice sweet as honey and just as sticky. "It's too much, too many stairs, too many memories. It's not healthy for you." I should have heard the calculation behind her concern. I should have noticed how her husband Kevin conveniently appeared at dinner with glossy pamphlets for retirement homes, brochures for senior communities, where apparently I could knit with strangers and wait quietly for the end. But I was drowning in loss, clinging to the thought that at least I still had her, my daughter, my reason for surviving Robert's death. I didn't see the vulture circling. The truth revealed itself with cruelty sharper than any knife. On a Tuesday afternoon, Victoria arrived with Kevin and 2 large suitcases of her own. She didn't ask permission. She announced Kevin got a promotion. "We need to move into town immediately. This house is perfect for us." I remember the way my heart thudded in my chest as I stared at her. Move in. But this was my home, the home Robert and I had built together. She didn't flinch. She let her mask slip for the briefest second, showing me the cold calculation beneath her polished exterior. "Actually, Mom, according to Dad's will, I inherited everything. The house, the accounts, the investments, all of it. I've been letting you stay here out of kindness, but it's time for you to find your own place." My ears rang, my hands trembled. Surely there's been some mistake. "No mistake," she cut me off. "Dad trusted me with his legacy. He knew you'd never understand money or investments. You were just the wife." Just the wife. 43 years, a lifetime of sacrifice, devotion, loyalty erased with 3 words. My daughter looked me dead in the eye and told me to leave. Then came the words that will echo in my bones until the day I die: "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." I left that house like an unwanted guest shuffled into Kevin's BMW as though I were garbage being hauled away. He muttered something about independence and freedom, not daring to meet my eyes. My daughter, my baby girl, handed me $200 in cash as if she were tipping a maid. "This should cover you for a few days," she said lightly. She told me there was a very affordable senior home on Maple Street, affordable for a woman about to inherit $33 million. That night, I sat on a sagging motel mattress, staring at faded wallpaper, trying to understand how I had gone from grieving widow to homeless mother in the space of 3 hours. I had sacrificed every part of myself for Robert and Victoria. I had cooked and cleaned and worked part-time jobs. I had been a devoted wife, a present mother, a constant anchor. And now I was nothing more than an inconvenience. But in that quiet, suffocating motel room, another voice began to rise inside me. A whisper of doubt, but also of defiance. Because Robert had been many things: traditional, controlling, at times stubborn about money. But he had never been cruel. He had once shown me his will, explained it carefully, making sure I understood. And I was certain that what Victoria had told me wasn't the truth. The next morning, I used the motel's weak Wi-Fi to search for Robert's lawyer, Mr. Harrison Fitzgerald. He had handled our affairs for years, a man Robert trusted implicitly. My heart raced as I rode a 20-minute bus into town, clutching the last of my cash. His secretary's eyes softened when she saw me, and when Mr. Fitzgerald himself emerged, his kind eyes widened with genuine surprise. "Margaret," he said, "I was wondering when you'd come in. I tried calling, but Victoria told me you were traveling. Traveling. My daughter had lied again. My voice shook as I asked about Robert's will. Confusion flashed across his face. Of course you were given a copy, he said. Victoria attended the reading on your behalf. She assured me you were too distraught. The blood drained from my face. Mr. Fitzgerald, I whispered. I was never told about any reading. Victoria told me I inherited nothing. His face darkened. He opened a file and slid a document toward me. I recognized Robert's neat signature. I recognized the careful wording. And as Mr. Fitzgerald began to read aloud, my world spun, then settled into devastating clarity. Robert had left me everything. 70% of all assets, the house, $23 million. And Victoria, my daughter, was to inherit only $10 million in trust contingent on how she treated me after his death. My husband, my Robert, had known. Somehow he had seen through the smile, the entitlement, the princess act. He had protected me even from beyond the grave. And with that realization came something I hadn't felt in weeks: power. I sat frozen in that office chair as Mr. Fitzgerald's voice read out each line of Robert's true will. The house, the furnishings, the accounts. 70% of everything, $23 million. My throat was dry, my pulse racing. And then came the final clause, the one that felt like thunder cracking the sky wide open. To my daughter, Victoria Sullivan Hayes, I leave $10 million in trust contingent upon her treatment of her mother following my death. Should she fail to treat her mother with respect and dignity, the inheritance reverts to Margaret Sullivan in full. Respect and dignity. Robert had known exactly what would happen. He had built a safeguard into the will, an invisible shield around me that Victoria's greed had shattered in her haste to claim power. I looked at Mr. Fitzgerald, my lips trembling. She told me I was useless. She threw me out of my own home. She gave me $200 in cash like a stranger, and she said— My voice cracked as the memory stabbed me again. She said to find somewhere else to die. Mr. Fitzgerald's face flushed with anger. Margaret, what your daughter has done isn't just immoral, it's criminal. Elder abuse, fraud, forgery. She presented you with false documents, didn't she? I nodded, remembering the papers she had waved in my face covered in seals and signatures I hadn't dared question. He tapped the real will with firm conviction. Your husband updated this 6 months before his death, precisely because of his concerns about Victoria's entitlement. She has cost herself everything. My breath came in shallow gasps. So, I don't just have 23 million. No, he said gently, his eyes steady on mine. You now have all 33 million, and the house, every account, every asset. For a long, terrible moment, I couldn't speak. My daughter had stolen my home, lied to my face, and stripped me of dignity, only to forfeit her own fortune in the process. The irony was cruel, perfect, almost biblical. What do I do now? I whispered. Mr. Fitzgerald's kind smile carried something else too steel. Now, my dear, we call the police, and then we call Victoria, because she's about to learn the shock of her life. The hours that followed were a blur of phone calls and meetings. A detective named Rodriguez reviewed the forged documents Victoria had shown me, her trained eye scanning every detail. These weren't made on a whim, she said. This took knowledge connections. Likely Kevin was involved. We'll subpoena his financial records. By late afternoon, every account was frozen. Every card Victoria had been swiping with smug entitlement was suddenly worthless. The house utilities she had already transferred into her name were suspended pending investigation. The empire she thought she controlled was crumbling before she even realized the foundations weren't hers. At exactly 3:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Victoria. Mom, her voice was sharp, frantic. Where are you? Something's wrong with the accounts. The bank is saying everything's frozen. What's going on? I steadied my voice, holding the phone like a weapon. Hello, Victoria. I'm sitting in Mr. Fitzgerald's office. You remember him, Daddy's lawyer, the one who read the real will to an empty room while you told him I was traveling. There was silence. Then a thin, brittle laugh. Mom, I don't know what you think you've discovered, but I cut her off. I discovered that you lied, that you forged documents. That you threw your 67-year-old mother out of her own house with 2 suitcases and a crumpled wad of cash. I also discovered that your father was smarter than either of us knew. He protected me, Victoria. He left everything to me. Her tone sharp in desperation seeping through the cracks. Mom, you're confused. You're grieving. Someone's taking advantage of you. You don't understand investments. Oh, I understand perfectly, I snapped. Your inheritance is gone. Every penny. It belongs to me now. Thanks to your treatment of me, you triggered the clause your father wrote. The 10 million you thought was yours. That's mine too. The silence on the line was heavy, broken only by the sound of her shallow breathing. That's impossible, she whispered. No, sweetheart, I said, my voice trembling with the weight of decades of dismissal. It's justice. Detective Rodriguez leaned closer, listening. I continued, steel in my voice. You forged legal documents. You committed fraud. You abused your own mother. And now the police know everything. They'll be speaking with you very soon. Mom, she pleaded now, her voice suddenly small. Please, let's talk. Let's meet privately. We can work this out. Oh, we'll be meeting, I said coldly. At the courthouse, when you're arraigned. You wouldn't, she gasped. I swallowed the last of my hesitation. Watch me. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't the helpless widow. I wasn't the discarded mother. I was the woman holding all the cards. That night, while Victoria and Kevin dined at a luxury restaurant, apparently celebrating their imagined inheritance, the police arrived. According to Detective Rodriguez, my daughter screamed about false arrest, demanding her lawyer, who turned out to be Kevin's golf buddy, with zero criminal law experience. Kevin was arrested at his office the next morning when investigators traced the forgeries back to one of his firm's shady printing contacts. The world that they had built on lies and arrogance crumbled like sand. And I, the woman they had dismissed as useless, finally began to feel the fire of justice flicker back to life inside me. But I had no idea that the real shocks were still to come. Because the deeper I dug into Robert's affairs, the more I discovered truths that would shake the foundations of everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about my daughter, and about myself. The house felt strange when I stepped back inside for the first time in weeks. It was my home, yet it reeked of Victoria's presence. Her designer clothes scattered across the master bedroom, her expensive cosmetics lined up in neat little rows where Robert's cologne and razors used to sit. For a moment, grief swelled again, and I thought I might crumble. But then I remembered the police carrying her away in handcuffs while she screamed about mistakes and misunderstandings. I remembered Kevin's hollow excuses about protecting me from myself, and I gathered their possessions into trash bags and left them on the porch. Let her collect them when she made bail. I slept in my bed that night for the first time since Robert's death. The mattress was too firm, the room too cold without him, but there was something else, something sharper and stronger, a sense that for once I wasn't living as someone's shadow. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was freedom. But the morning brought complications. Harrison called with updates. Victoria's bail had been set at 50,000, Kevin's at 200. Apparently the judge hadn't been impressed by Kevin's history of financial crime, something I'd never known about. Securities fraud, shady investment schemes, skeletons rattling in closets I had been deliberately kept out of. The man I had trusted with my daughter's future had been a crook all along. Then came the media. Channel 7 wanted an interview. Your story could help other seniors recognize family financial abuse, the reporter told me. And though I wanted to crawl into privacy, there was a part of me that understood her point. How many mothers were being quietly robbed of dignity by their own children? How many women were being treated as disposable the way I had been? I didn't answer her then. I poured a glass of wine Kevin had bought for Robert last Christmas. Ironic, really, that I was now drinking it in a house they had tried to steal, and I thought about whether telling my story might become more than revenge. Maybe it could become a warning, a shield for someone else. But before I could decide, Victoria showed up at my door. It was early, the sun barely over the horizon, and there she was on my porch, hair disheveled, mascara streaking her cheeks, looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Mom, she whispered, her voice broken. Please, we need to talk. I didn't invite her in. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, remembering her cold eyes when she told me to get out of my own home. We talked yesterday, I said flatly. You told me to find somewhere to die. She flinched like the words were a slap. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I'm still your daughter. I studied her carefully. Was she still my daughter, or just a stranger who wore her face? Daughters don't forge legal documents to steal from their mothers. Daughters don't commit felonies and call it protection. Her lips trembled, but her pride fought back. I was trying to protect you from making bad financial decisions. You've never managed large amounts of money, Mom. You don't understand how complicated. Even then, standing on my porch with criminal charges hanging over her head, she couldn't stop belittling me, couldn't stop pretending she was superior. I cut her off. Victoria, let me tell you something your father said to me 6 months before he died. He told me he was worried about your sense of entitlement, about the way you treated people you considered beneath you. He changed his will because he was afraid of what you'd do to me if you were in control. Her face drained of color. Daddy never said that. Yes, he did, and he left me proof. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Robert's voice, strong and steady, filled the morning air. If you're hearing this, Victoria, it means my fears about your character were justified. He spoke of my sacrifices, of my devotion, of the decades I had poured into our family. He spoke of her arrogance, her selfishness, and his hope that he was wrong. But by the time the recording ended, her tears told the truth. She had proven him right in the worst possible way. Victoria sank onto the porch steps, sobbing. Not the crocodile tears of manipulation, but raw, broken sounds that seemed to tear out of her. He hated me, she whispered. No, I said softly. He loved you enough to hope you'd prove him wrong. You chose to prove him right instead. She lifted her tear-streaked face to mine. What happens now? Now, I said firmly, you face the consequences of your choices, the fraud charges, the investigation, the humiliation when the news breaks. Her voice cracked with desperation. Please, Mom, think about the children, about Kevin's career, about our family. I looked at her long and hard. I am thinking about family. And family doesn't throw each other away for money. For the first time in decades, she saw me not the pushover mother, not the obedient wife, not the woman who stayed quiet. She saw the woman who had survived betrayal and turned it into strength. You deserved this, didn't you? She whispered. Yes, Victoria, I said quietly but with conviction. You absolutely did. But just when I thought the battle was over, another storm gathered on the horizon. 3 days later, Kevin's mother arrived at my door, immaculate, dripping with diamonds, radiating the same entitlement I had seen in Victoria. She sat in my living room as if granting me an audience, and with the coolness of someone negotiating a business deal, she offered me $5 million to drop the charges. That's when I realized the rot ran deeper than I imagined. Because behind my daughter's betrayal and my son-in-law's crimes lay an even darker truth, one buried in Robert's past, in the carefully ordered files he left behind. And once I uncovered it, I would never see my husband the same way again. When Kevin's mother, Eleanor Hayes, swept into my living room with her jewels and her arrogance, I almost laughed. She perched on my sofa as if she owned the place, her every word laced with the kind of privilege that comes from generations of money. Kevin made some poor choices, she said smoothly, but prosecuting him seems vindictive. Surely we can settle this rationally. Vindictive. That was her word for justice. Her solution, $2 million if I agreed to drop the charges. When I refused, she upped the offer to $5 million for my silence. $5 million to forgive the man who helped forge documents, stole my house, and told me I was useless. I looked her dead in the eye and said my answer is no. Her composure cracked just slightly before she leaned forward, lowering her voice to a whisper meant to intimidate. Kevin's legal team has uncovered certain irregularities in your husband's business practices. If those came out during a trial, it could be unfortunate for you. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a chill colder than betrayal. Robert. My Robert. Could there be secrets lurking in his carefully maintained empire? I called Harrison immediately. He listened with his steady calm, then warned me. Margaret, they're bluffing. Or they think they've found something. Either way, the Hayes family will use anything they can to muddy the waters. If there are skeletons, we need to know before they drag them into court. That night, I sat alone in Robert's study, my study now, and opened his files. Every drawer was meticulously labeled, every folder neatly stacked. My husband had been organized to a fault, almost obsessively so. But as I worked deeper into the layers, I began to see patterns that made my stomach turn. Consulting fees paid to companies that didn't exist, shell corporations that dissolved as quickly as they appeared, payments that lined up too perfectly with known criminal activity reported in the news. The more I dug, the more my chest tightened. My hands shook as I spread documents across the desk, my breath catching on the possibility forming in my mind. Robert hadn't just been an astute businessman, he had been moving money millions of dollars through shadowy channels. By midnight, I was no longer a grieving wife uncovering files. I was a woman staring at the ruins of a marriage built on lies. The next morning, I brought everything to a private investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Carol Chen. Within hours, she confirmed my dread. "Mrs. Sullivan," she said gently but firmly, "your husband was laundering money. For at least 12 years, he used his firm to wash illegal funds through fake contracts and shell companies." I remember pressing my hands against my mouth to keep from screaming. "That's impossible. He was honest. She shook her head. "I'm sorry, but the evidence is overwhelming. And there's more. The 10 million he left Victoria. It came directly from laundered accounts. If the FBI discovers this, they could seize everything. Everything. The house, the accounts, the fortune that Robert had left me as his final act of love. It wasn't love at all, it was blood money." As if summoned by my dread, Victoria called that evening. Her voice was taut, calculated. "Mom, we need to talk. About Daddy. There are things you don't know." "I already know," I said coldly. "The laundering, the shell companies, the dirty money. I know everything." Her silence was deafening before she finally said, "Then you know we can make a deal. Kevin's lawyers have been speaking with the FBI. If we cooperate, we get immunity. You get to keep 5 million in the house. The rest goes to the government. No charges, no trial." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her audacity. She had tried to steal from me, lied to me, and thrown me away. And now she wanted me to join her in exploiting Robert's sins to save herself. "Victoria," I whispered, "you're asking me to become your accomplice." "I'm asking you to be practical. Otherwise, you'll lose everything." Her words sank deep into my bones. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was about to lose it all. But I also remembered Robert's recorded voice, the man who feared her entitlement. And I remembered the woman I had become, the one who had stood up to betrayal and refused to be silenced. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of Robert's study, surrounded by files that rewrote my marriage, my life, my identity. My husband had been a liar, my daughter was a criminal, and I was standing in the wreckage of both. But grief had taught me something I hadn't known before: I could survive being broken. And if I could survive that, then I could survive this. So I picked up the phone, my voice steady now, my decision made. "Carol," I said to the investigator, "how fast can you arrange a meeting with the FBI? I have a story they need to hear, and I want to tell it before Victoria does." Hours later, I found myself sitting in a federal conference room across from Agent Sarah Martinez. Her presence was commanding, her eyes sharp with the kind of intelligence that couldn't be fooled. "Mrs. Sullivan," she said, "do you understand what you're admitting? By coming forward, you could lose everything." I met her gaze and felt something shift in me, something unshakable. "Agent Martinez. 2 weeks ago, I was a widow sleeping in a budget motel because my daughter told me I was useless. Today, I am here to tell you the truth. Fear is no longer my primary emotion." She tilted her head. "And what is?" "Anger," I said without hesitation. "Anger at being underestimated. Anger at being betrayed. Anger at being treated like I was nothing." A faint smile touched her lips. "Mrs. Sullivan, would you be willing to wear a wire?" In that moment, I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was fighting back. 3 hours later, I sat in my living room with a wire taped to my chest. The room was quiet except for the sound of my own heartbeat pounding like a drum. The doorbell rang right on time. Victoria and Kevin stood there dressed as if they were walking into a business meeting, not a trap. Kevin carried a briefcase. Victoria carried the same air of superiority she always had, though the cracks were starting to show. "Mom," she said, kissing my cheek as though nothing had happened, "you look better than you have in weeks." "I feel better," I replied. "Clarity has that effect." Kevin snapped open the briefcase, his tone smooth, rehearsed. "Margaret, our lawyers have structured this very favorably. You keep the house 5 million in clean assets and full immunity from any charges related to Robert's business. Everyone walks away happy. Clean assets, I repeated slowly, tasting the words. Interesting phrase. Victoria's eyes flickered nervously. Mom, what matters is that this is our best chance. We protect the family name. We move forward. I leaned forward, and the 33 million Robert left me. Kevin's jaw tightened. That money is tainted. It can't be separated from the criminal activity. 5 million is the best you'll get. Take it. The audacity of it burned through me like fire. And what do you get out of this arrangement? Kevin didn't blink. We get to put this misunderstanding behind us. Victoria's charges disappear. My reputation remains intact. Our family heals. Misunderstanding, I echoed. Is that what you call forging documents, stealing from me, and throwing me out of my own home? Victoria's composure began to crack. Mom, what are you doing? Why are you being so difficult? Because I want to understand something, I said, my voice sharp. When did you first discover Robert's activities? Did you know when you married into this family, Kevin? Or only later when you were planning to steal my inheritance? Kevin and Victoria exchanged nervous glances. His confidence slipped for the first time. That's not relevant to our discussion. Oh, I think it is, I said, leaning back. Because if you knew all along, that makes you complicit. And if you only found out while committing your own crimes, well, that just makes you unlucky. Don't you think Agent Martinez? The color drained from their faces as Agent Martinez and two federal officers walked in from the kitchen, badges raised. Kevin's briefcase snapped shut in panic. This conversation is over. No, Kevin, I said, my voice steady, my heart hammering. It's just beginning. The agents moved quickly, confiscating the briefcase and their phones. Victoria Sullivan Hayes and Kevin Hayes, Agent Martinez, announced you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder abuse, and attempted extortion of a federal witness. Victoria's face twisted in disbelief. Mom, how could you do this to your own family? I looked at her evenly. The same way you forged documents and told me I was useless. Except my way is legal. As the handcuffs snapped shut, Kevin tried one last desperate move. Margaret, you don't understand. There are people tied to Robert's business who won't appreciate federal attention. You're putting yourself in danger. Are you threatening a federal witness? Agent Martinez asked coolly. Kevin faltered. I'm warning her about reality. The reality, she said, is that you just added witness intimidation to your charges. When the door closed behind them, silence filled the house. For the first time in weeks, it wasn't the silence of loss, it was the silence of victory. Days later, Agent Martinez returned with another revelation that shook me to my core. Robert had indeed laundered money, but he had done it as an undercover informant working with the FBI for over a decade to help bring down organized crime families. The money he left me was legal federal compensation for his cooperation disguised to maintain his cover. My inheritance was mine, untainted. Tears burned my eyes as I realized the truth. Robert hadn't betrayed me. He had protected me in ways I couldn't even fathom. My husband of 43 years had lived a double life, yes, but a double life that ended with me standing free, not ruined. 6 months later, I no longer recognized the woman in the mirror. The grief-stricken widow who once packed her life into 2 suitcases was gone. In her place stood someone new, a woman who had taken betrayal and turned it into fire. With my inheritance, I created the Margaret Sullivan Foundation for Elder Protection, funding legal aid for seniors like me, people discarded and exploited by the very families they trusted. Victoria and Kevin were sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. Their downfall splashed across newspapers and television screens, my name tied to every headline. Reporters called me the mother who fought back. Netflix called me something else, a story worth telling. But the titles didn't matter. What mattered was that I finally found myself. For the first time in decades, I wasn't living as Robert's wife or Victoria's mother. I was living as Margaret. When people ask me if I regret it, if I regret turning my daughter in, if I regret the media storm, the broken family ties, I tell them no. Because family isn't just blood. Family is who protects you when you're vulnerable, not who exploits you. And sometimes the hardest, cruelest betrayals carry the most powerful lessons. I walk through my house now, and it finally feels like mine. The walls are painted in colors I chose. The study is now an art studio where I paint in the morning sun, and in every brushstroke I feel the truth the best revenge isn't just getting even, it's becoming everything they thought you could never be. So if you're listening to me now, I want you to remember this. You are never as powerless as they want you to believe. Sometimes betrayal is the fire that forges you into someone stronger than you ever imagined. If my story touched, you don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And please leave a comment with your own story, because your voice matters too. Together we remind the world that no one has the right to throw us away.